Hello there, Alan Plum here again with a little more from Shed Engineering, and we're continuing with our build on the N-gauge Folding model railway. Here I'm starting the scenery and trying to do the tunnel section to cover the turning circle, and I'm making a mould basically out of cardboard to cover the track and create the tunnel. So all this at this end is just cardboard put together with a hot glue gun. Then obviously here you can see that I'm using expanding foam, so it was quite important to make sure that there was no gaps in the mould. So we continued filling the mould. It's best to do it in several layers, otherwise you're restricting the first layer. You can be a bit impatient, but it's far better to do it in several stages. So it's just a matter of adding layers until you get the desired height for your landscape. And as you can see, it works quite well. Next we started on this middle section where the scissors are in the foreground, and I started off by masking off the track. Now the section that we've just done to the left with that green divider has got to lift out to give access to the track. So basically I've got to create a separate mould for this centre section so that it doesn't glue itself to the section we've just done. So here I'm just making a paper template. It's easier to just keep adding bits on until you've got a rough shape to make the divider. Then using that template, I transferred that onto some old plywood. I think this was the back of an old cupboard. Check it fits, and then I glued that in position with grip fix mastic. So once that was nicely glued in, we had to try and make sure that that partition or divider stayed vertical and allowed that first section to lift out. So this is just some 25mm thick building foam triangles cut out just to use as supports. This final section that's going in will make the end of the mould for the centre section. And then it was just a matter of checking that that end section was still free and lifted in and out. So we're all right there. So now we needed something to block up the recesses and limit the amount of foam we were going to use on larger areas where strength wasn't absolutely imperative. Now I know papier-mâché is very strong, but why don't people use shredded paper? I've never seen it used before, so this is what I'm experimenting with. And on this little experimental hillock, even loosely packed like this, it gives quite a lot of support. And so I'm just using wallpaper paste and PVA glue diluted down into a spray bottle, and then laying out the shredded paper, spraying it, not so that it's absolutely saturated, but that it's wet enough that it'll actually stick together and dry hard. So just keep flipping it over and spraying it until it's thoroughly damp all the way through, and then that can be used to, as I say, fill the areas where you might lose a lot of foam. Well, in this corner I know that I've got a good amount of strength with that divider across, the cross ribs along the bottom, the foam in the bottom, and the track bed, and so I'm packing that under the track so that the foam doesn't expand under there. Same again here. And filling up in between these dividers so that again it limits the amount of foam that's actually used. As you can see, I'm not packing it tightly, although the tighter you pack it, the stronger it'll be. Then you can start applying the foam. I'm squirting some down in the bottom so that it just bonds everything together. Obviously the temptation is to overfill it, but the more you work with the expanding foam, you get a better idea of just how much to use. And as you can see there, I probably used far too much. Now as a beginner, I'm obviously experimenting with all sorts of things. I like to do a little bit of lateral thinking. To get 15 or 20 layers of paper, tearing it up would be very, very tedious. But here's a pancake of wet shredded paper. This is the little hillock that I made before, just loosely packed. And I've allowed this pancake of paper to soak for perhaps 10 minutes or so. And it starts to mould down quite nicely. You're able to smooth it out, and I think I then wet it a little bit more, a few little dry strands here and there, so I make sure there's plenty of glue on the surface. You can then start to tuck the ends underneath, And then here I'm just trying to neaten up the edge, and because it's such small pieces you can see how I can create quite a nice little edge, and I think with some practice it could be quite a useful modelling material. And this next clip just shows you how strong it can be once dry. Right, here we have the papier-mâché. If you remember, it was just made out of shredded paper. That has now dried, and that is pretty strong, even though it's just loosely packed inside. So now I want a road that goes under the railway line and then makes its way up and over the hill. Now I've seen the scenic road kits and all the rest of it, but again, this is down to experimentation. I've cut the shape of the road out using some relatively thin card, a little bit thicker than a good quality Christmas card, and just roughly painted it grey. I've carved away the base sheet that'll be coming under the track, and I've carved away a groove for the road to fit into up the hillside. Then just lay a ribbon of expanding foam all the way along up the hillside where the road is going to go. And we take the cardboard road, place it under the track, gently lay it onto the ribbon of foam before it's expanded too much. Be very careful, it's nasty stuff if you get it onto your fingers. I do advise wearing gloves in actual fact, but in this case I can gently press the cardboard down into the foam, and you have got to then stay with it, because obviously the foam is continuing to expand for the next 15 minutes or so. So it's a steady process of just pressing it down, adjusting it, and apart from the time factor, it works very, very well. So here you can just see that I'm pulling the foam away from the road as it's expanding. So it's very, very messy in some respects, and I'm pressing the road down under the track because obviously the foam is still expanding and I don't want that to lift too far. Again, you can manipulate the foam to some extent, and here on the other side of what will be the viaduct, again you can see that I'm pulling the foam away from the road, but all being well, within 15 or 20 minutes you've got your road in place. Now here's another technique that some people might be interested in. My apologies for the view and the lighting. I keep getting in the way and casting a shadow over what I'm trying to show. I haven't used any of the artificial trees or the fibres rolled up into balls to represent trees, etc. And obviously up in Derbyshire there's a lot of lush woodland on a lot of the hills before you get up into the higher peaks where the moorland starts. So this technique is just using tiny little drops of expanding foam and cutting it off with a knife. It's very difficult to control. You're just trying to get little blobs basically, randomly spaced apart, which will swell up and represent the trees. Now I discovered this technique more by accident than anything, and I'm not having a go in any way, shape or form about the traditional way of modelling trees, but it does strike me that they'd be rather delicate for young children. And I often, even though I haven't got children of my own, I'm wondering how many granddads and dads have got to say to their children, you know, don't touch, don't touch. And I've got a feeling that this technique could be a lot more durable, because quite honestly I think when you see the results at the end when I've got this painted, you'll be quite surprised, and I should be able to run the over it and a brush with absolute ease, and it won't come to any harm whatsoever. Now again, I haven't seen this technique on any other YouTube videos, and I'm quite honestly looking forward to hearing the opinions of the experienced modelers out there. Although quite honestly at the moment it looks like a pile of puffed up poo. And here I'm obviously filling in under the track bed. That'll give added support, glue everything together. You can see the bus wire, so I'm hoping the foam will insulate the soldered joints from the droppers to the bus wire, and seeing as the wire will be completely supported and won't be allowed to move, I'm hoping it should be pretty reliable. Again, it's all experimental. And there we have a pile of puffed up foam that I've now got to turn into trees. So then you've got to put some texture into these foam blobs. I'm just using a half round chisel cum woodcut tool. I've already dug down between the trees and separated them with my Dremel tool with a little straight fluted cutter. Then I'm going to go over it with a screwdriver and just add some further texture. Then we have to paint it and get into all the crevices. This is just black emulsion paint, a little bit of green in there, but it's very important to get right down into all the crevices and get rid of all the white. And if you were to use a combination of browns, you could soon have a very realistic boulder field. So now we're starting on the green, and we're going to try and get the light coming in from one direction, from the right hand side. The deodorant bottle is just representing one of the trees to give you an example, and so the right hand side would always be the lightest, the medium tone of green would be in the center, and the darkest shade would be obviously on the left. Now obviously it doesn't always apply. Some trees will be shading others. They're right in the center, obviously. It's probably going to be darker, but as a general rule of thumb, I think you'll achieve far better results if you try and keep that in mind. So here we are starting off with the darkest green, going round each individual tree, always keeping the darkest colour on the left hand side. So now we've swapped over to the medium green and we're starting to build up the colour on the middle of each tree. And there we're swapping over to the lightest colour on the right hand side. Probably a little bit prominent, but you can soon start to blend it down. It just reminds you of what you're trying to achieve. And that probably took 15 or 20 minutes to do that, and I think you're starting to get the general idea, and you start to build up something that's looking quite reasonable. So we're now approaching something that's half reasonable. Remember, this is my first attempt at doing this. I'm sure with a bit of practice can make improvements. I don't like the semicircular cuts, they need to be disguised, but overall I think it's quite a realistic effect. I think the beauty of it is its durability. You could easily run a hoover over this or a brush and it wouldn't come to any harm at all. Obviously I look forward to the experienced modelers out there and get their opinion. I hope you found the video interesting. I look forward to your comments and thank you very much for watching.